feeding hungry people. It's one of the basic human needs, one of the core things that every human needs to survive.
There's an important constituency that supports the arts that does it not necessarily because of a passion for the arts as such, but because of a deep conviction that the presence and vibrancy of arts in this country makes this a better place.
We live in both worlds. We live in the world of people who eat every day, who drive cars, who live in the suburbs or live in a nice house in the city. And we also have a window through our nonprofits into another world. And we are the people that can bridge that gap.
From soup kitchens to symphony orchestras, nonprofit organizations fulfill a vital role in our lives, caring for the needy, enriching our culture, and educating young and old. Fundraising is the engine that drives this important work in our communities. Now, the sometimes difficult task of asking others to contribute money falls squarely on the shoulders of the nonprofit board. As a board member myself, I understand the challenges that come with that board responsibility. Each of us has known that sense of uneasiness when we're faced with the task of asking a friend or acquaintance for a contribution. So how do we as board members effectively carry out our fundraising responsibilities? How do we overcome our fears and concerns about asking for money? Well, to find the answers, we can look to some of our peers. Despite the obstacles, there are thousands of board members from all kinds of organizations who have demonstrated their ability to be advocates, solicitors, and stewards for their causes. We'll meet some of these people today, and they'll tell us about their challenges and successes. Most important, they'll describe the process they went through to successfully raise money needed to carry out an important public service.
When I first started raising monies, it was difficult because it's not something that comes to mind easily to go and just ask someone for at least personally. It's very difficult for me to just go out and ask for something for myself. But when I began to focus on the larger mission of the organization and how it's really a conduit to a larger audience, that's where it became easier, because I really went back to the reason of why I'm here. I'm here because I believe in this organization. I'm here because I see the connection between the work that occurs on this stage and an audience and the larger community, not only in this neighborhood, but the entire metropolitan area.
It is the board's responsibility in the community to be the voice of the mission that the organization, I mean, this is my belief, not everybody believes this. And therefore, as a board member, they are in the best position to make connections with the other members of the community that ought to be appreciating the fact that this entity exists.
I don't mean to be cynical about this, but frankly, my view is if there isn't some obvious willingness on the part of the individual to get involved in the fundraising, in the development efforts of the organization at the outset, they have no business on the board in the first place.
The nonprofit board is responsible for ensuring the success of its organization's mission. That success will be determined in large part by the board's willingness and ability to not only identify, but also to deliver resources to the organization. As volunteers, board members are in a unique position to be effective at raising funds. We're not only committed to the work of an organization, but we're connected to a broader community. We can be the bridge that joins more people to the nonprofit and its important work.
As a staff member, it's very difficult to go directly to those individuals. It's always best, and I think the rule most people believe in, and I believe in it, is people give to people they know. And so therefore, a board member is in the best place to facilitate that support.
Board members are the best people to raise money because they are not going to make a buck from it.
They have a broader agenda. They do other things than sit on that board. They are not the paid employees of a particular organization and out raising money in that way. And frequently, board members are people who have had a direct contact themselves with giving, with fundraising in a broader context. And therefore, when they say we are now committed to this particular organization, it helps to validate the cause in the eyes of those who might consider it.
Many times you have people on the board who you value because programmatically they're so important. They know the issues, they're very good on content, they can help you by picking up the phone if you need to go in and get something accomplished. But you shouldn't let a board member off the hook on their fundraising responsibility.
The entire board bears the responsibility for designing, overseeing, and implementing the development process. One of the first ways they can do this is by setting a goal of 100% personal giving. Now, even though we as board members give our time, our financial participation at whatever level is critical.
The funders are saying, why should we give our institutional dollars if the board of directors, whose responsibility it is to raise the funds, hasn't even committed to the organization enough to give what they can?
If those individuals say they're willing to dig into their pockets, we as a foundation should look closely at making an investment because they've made that initial investment, and that's critical.
From day to day, the real engine that drives this all is the energy of the volunteers, and the volunteers are much more energetic, are much more committed, much more concerned if they have invested themselves and are out there to protect the value of that in which they've invested.
Whether you're a board member of a highly visible national agency or a small grassroots nonprofit, gaining access to resources makes a critical difference. But raising money is not a short-term project. It is the product of an ongoing process known as development. A well-organized development committee should guide the fundraising tasks of the board. One of the first of these tasks is developing the prospect list. Boards often miss opportunities to raise funds through personal and business contacts when they relegate this critical work to the committee and staff rather than making it a joint effort.
When we identify prospective donors, it's really both the staff and the individual board member coming up with a list. And in most of the cases, it's someone that we know either personally or on a business relationship or through some other association. So it's not a situation where you don't know the prospective donor, and I think that's very important.
You need to listen in every nook and cranny, you know, every conversation. My husband says that I'm never in a room that I'm not listening to at least 3 conversations at once. And that's probably true because I might pick up something that I can use later.
At our board meetings from time to time, we have a list of names that essentially have been culled from our donor list, and we have our board members go through that list, try to identify names on the list that they think that they might know, and try to do follow-up that way.
One of the things I always do is read the newspaper, and that includes the business journal as well as the regular local newspaper, to find out who's doing what and who's doing well. And I try to think of what is a good fit for their company and what program would be right for them.
One can almost always find something that a significant donor is particularly interested in. If you've got a performing arts organization, if you've got a symphony, for example, there's a particular kind of music that will interest that person. Or the person is primarily interested in education. Or the person really is excited about the idea of commissioning new works, or whatever the case may be. It's important, it seems to me, to remember those focused interests.
Personal contact between board members and donors is critical to a successful development process. With the assistance of the staff, board members must involve prospective supporters in the work of the organization.
What comes before the ask is the development of a relationship. We try to make sure that we get people down to our facility to get a very good understanding of what we're doing. And they see a warehouse with food literally stacked to the rafters and people moving around the warehouse, sorting and packing, and everything seems to flow from that.
it is very important, it seems to me, to involve the prospect with an understanding of what, in this case, the Atlanta Symphony is all about. Attending symphony concerts, having an opportunity to meet leaders of the symphony in a variety of ways, that whole kind of thing.
You become almost, of necessity, a part of the effort, and it's easier to say yes, and then it's easier to move to going to some other community person and saying, well, I got really excited when I would look what they're doing. Come join me.
I call it the Anne Frank theory of fundraising. You really can't understand what it means for 6 million people to have died, but to understand the story of one child. And when you go into a corporate office, they really can't wrap their minds around what it means for huge numbers of people to be suffering or huge numbers of people to be in need. What you need to do is to bring it down to one child, to one mother, to one father, to one family, and to make it real in that sense, the same way Anne Frank was able to make the Holocaust real for so many people all over the world.
To take a compelling message into the community, it is essential to develop a case for support. Now, this case statement describes why your organization or program exists, whom it serves, and the impact it has in the community. Now, the case statement should focus on results, not needs. As a published document, it should be rich in images that demonstrate to a potential donor how contributing to your organization is making an excellent investment in the community.
I am one who is not terribly impressed with the glossy presentation of the case. I think the facts are more important than the binding in which the facts are found.
It's very easy to get proposals that have wonderful ideas and concepts on paper. The first thing you see is the paper request for a proposal.
It needs to involve the essential facts in a way that they can be grasped very quickly. And what are those essential facts? This is the organization. These are the needs that are paramount. This is the plan we have to address those needs. And here is the place we hope you will participate.
Part of the review process is to really understand, is this linked to a local community? Are there local community people who also feel that this program is worth doing and worthwhile?
Grace Cathedral is really a cathedral for the whole city, and that was much easier to sell. If you ever look at a list of all the activities that go on there every day, there's so many that have nothing to do with religious services, but they have all the 12-step programs, the homeless, battered women, everything that you can imagine goes on there, and no one is ever asked what religion they are before they attend one of those meetings. So that's a big selling point.
Much of the public is not familiar with our community, I think, so we think that we're been a very important part of the fabric of this country, and it's important that more people know about us. This is the only national Japanese American museum in the country. There are some regional ones, but no national ones.
I believe that culture should reflect a community. The culture of this community, the culture of this country, should reflect the people who live in our communities. So the case for Gala Hispanic Theater is to point out to people that every person who lives in a community, in this particular case, that their interests in culture, their own expressions need to be presented. I think in the Hispanic community, an organization like Gala, however, serves a role beyond being a cultural or an arts organization. It provides an opportunity to be educated. It provides an opportunity to learn about other people. It provides an opportunity in many ways to just come together.
One of the things we had to do was get away from the notion that we were raising money to build a building. And I think it's more accurately described that we were raising money to provide more and better services to the people of San Francisco that need it. And our message was that the present building that we were in was really serving as an obstacle to allowing us to get out to the people that we wanted to help.
I think it is better for a prospect to know in advance that you are coming with real conviction about your belief in the organization to ask for a serious contribution to support something that you care about and believe that Mrs. Jones or Mr. Jones or whoever cares about as well. I don't think one should be apologetic about fundraising.
I think that many of the people in grassroots activities don't feel that they actually are, quote, important enough to go talk to an important corporate head about making a donation, even though they may patronize those businesses. And so they have to get some self-esteem about their right as the eyes and ears and voice of this entity to be in the community and to say to the community, this is important. This activity needs to happen. It needs your support. It's enriching your community. Join us.
I sort of look at it as a way of sharing my enthusiasm and excitement about the organization with them and giving them a chance to get involved.
Just to pick up the phone and chalk someone off your list, that's not going to do it. But if you're excited and you love it and you can say, don't you want to be a part of this, and really mean it, then people will believe you and they'll give.
After deciding who should meet with a prospective donor, have the board member who best knows the person make the call to set an appointment. Now, this person does not necessarily need to attend the meeting. Whether you're approaching an individual, a corporation, or a foundation, you should familiarize yourself with that individual or group's special interests and past giving history. Putting together this background is an ongoing process where a staff can be invaluable.
For me, the most comfortable thing is, if I'm not doing it myself, take a staff person. Now, the staff person can be a bishop or a president, but someone who knows the facts. Because I tend to get involved in the fun of it, the glory, not the glory, but I mean, you know, look, don't you want to build a cathedral? I mean, you know, what's the matter with you? And I always want to be sure I have a backup person who can tell the history of the organization or some fiscal information, if necessary, that I may not have at my fingertips.
Now, while many organizations will send a staff member alone to meet with a prospect, most successful development staff agree that having a board member along sends a signal of support from the community and the organization's leadership. Remember that the board member must be able to say he or she has already made a contribution. Even if you're meeting with only one prospective donor, it's always better to send two people on a call. At least one of these should be a board member. Surprisingly, it feels less awkward to have a conversation among three people than just between two. There's more opportunity for dialogue and for listening. And if there are two of you attending the meeting, be sure you meet in advance to discuss who will actually ask for the contribution and exactly how much he or she will request. You'd be surprised how many meetings have ended badly simply because the person asking for the gift didn't specify an amount or didn't research what amount would be appropriate for that donor.
Usually what I do is I try to find out as much about the person as possible through my community ties, and the staffer finds out as much as possible about their giving history. Whether it's online or going to a foundation library or through the directories they keep in the development office, so that I know that they never give to bricks and mortar, they have a long-term giving history in the arts or what other agencies they've given to in the past. Also, I need to know what amounts they usually give.
I think one of the mistakes that nonprofits make is letting someone who can afford more give less.
I can't tell you the number of people who ask me for the wrong number and who come in and ask me for a number that's about a third of what I, in fact, had been thinking of, and I can't wait to sign that pledge card.
I do think trying to help a prospect raise her or his sights by asking for a number that might be a little stretch, I think that's not only satisfactory, it's probably the norm.
make them feel as if they're joining you in something, but don't make them feel as if this is, you are indeed asking for the sun, moon, and stars. I believe, because if you do that, they will, with you, laugh and say, you must be kidding.
I asked someone for money when I really hadn't done my homework, and I asked on behalf of my alma mater, and this was somebody who had actually gotten kicked out of the school.
Handling an objection or a negative response is perhaps the most difficult part of fundraising. The trick is turning a negative into a positive. Instead of arguing, acknowledge the person's concerns or feelings. Let the prospect know you understand and are listening.
Well, I sent him a thank you letter and told him how much I appreciated his time. And then I said, you're obviously a very passionate man and you have children, and I'm working with another group which I think might actually be a better fit for you. And so I made another appointment, and I went back in and faced the dragon one more time. And he was a little sheepish when I met him. And his corporation did give money to the other charity.
Sometimes a little creative thinking is the key to turning a negative response around. There are other ways to overcome continued skepticism. You can offer a tour or have the prospect meet last year's scholarship winner or even see your organization's budget. If your prospect just isn't interested, try to keep the door open for next year or for a different project or program need.
What you do when someone says no is say, well, I hope it's all right if I come back in 6 months and see if your thoughts about it have changed, and just keep you abreast of what we're doing.
You cannot regard it as personally defeating. You can, and particularly, you can't regard it as a defeat, long-term defeat for the organization.
Sometimes it takes 5 or 6 years of work, and that's certainly on the cathedral, to get someone to give you anything at all, because you have to sort of awaken their interest.
People give because they are asked. Now, as board members, we sometimes feel like we're nagging people to support our causes. And yet, most donors will tell you that they like to be asked to contribute. One reason is that by giving money, people can participate in organizations which deliver essential services in their community. Understanding people's motives for giving can help you streamline your message when meeting with a prospect.
I think there are multiple reasons why people give money to charities. One reason is that the right person asks.
You give because you feel accountable to somebody. Now, that's probably an individual. You've been very important in my life. You and I are great friends, and you picked up my kids and carpooled with us for years and so forth, and I'm not going to tell you no for anything.
Often they'll want to see who else is giving. I have actually had people say to me, and what did my peer group do?
I think also people give out of guilt, which is fine. I have no problem with that.
And although this may sound idealistic, I think people care about what happens in a place that they live.
A number of other people like to see their name up on walls.
Look, there are certain people and individuals who are in the business of making gifts, and all you're doing is offering them an opportunity to do their job.
While giving is a basic need, and a certain natural satisfaction comes from it, all donors want to know that their gift was appreciated and that it made a difference. Maintaining relationships with contributors over time is often overlooked, and yet it's one of the most important steps in the development process where board and staff work together.
Oftentimes groups forget that once they get the check, it is about continuing to cultivate this relationship.
And I think it's important to communicate to them, first of all, how important their gift was and what impact their gift is having.
I believe you cannot thank someone enough. And I also believe if you don't thank them in a very timely fashion, it's terribly offensive.
I try to follow up. I try to show my appreciation. I try to make sure that all the right letters of appreciation go out, that there are succeeding luncheons and dinners and invitations to this, that, and the other.
You should invite foundation staff to a community event or an important event, not always related to the program request, but to continue to keep your organization in the foundation's radar screen.
Suppose at a symphony someone has endowed a chair. There's a wonderful opportunity to keep that as a vital proposition by seeing that the musician who holds that chair gets to know the person who endowed it, that there are annual opportunities to say hello.
My alma mater, whenever someone gives to the scholarship fund or establishes a fund, they send a notice to the donor about who was a recipient for the year and keep them posted on how well that individual is doing.
Hopefully, you have found a person who is going to have a long-term relationship with you, and communication, feedback, correspondence is key to try to maintain a connection with the person over time.
The desire to give to others is a strong human need. That's why philanthropy stands at the heart of our society, binding us as individuals and organizations to the communities around us. Through the development process, board members play a pivotal role in the work of nonprofit organizations. By identifying and cultivating leads, asking directly for contributions, and maintaining an ongoing relationship with donors, the board makes the critical difference in an organization's ability to raise money and to carry out its mission in the community. It's a difficult challenge, but also one of the most deeply rewarding. I hope that the people you've heard from today will help you feel confident that you too can successfully raise money. In doing so, you'll be making a difference for yourself, your organization, and your community.
I think that that's the way we get along. That's the way the society is better, is managed, is stable for us, for our offspring, for our loved ones. It works because of charitable instincts.
I personally was very fortunate growing up of having parents who pushed both my brothers and I to get a college education and to have a wonderful experience in my undergraduate and graduate school. And I feel it's important to give back.
To work with organizations that address the neglect that historically occurred for certain communities in this country is a very personal thing, and it is something that I believe is the only way that we can really ensure that there's going to be full participation by the people who live in this country. And we can't talk about bringing people together if we don't let people participate.
I got involved because that's where you can make a difference. You as a board member are responsible and in charge. So you have a certain amount of power to make a difference. You set policy. And so you're not involved in just volunteerism that is the day-to-day work. You can do that, but you get to say the direction that the organization is going to go. And commensurate with that, what goes hand in hand with that is a responsibility to keep it afloat and make sure it's doing things right.
And it was years ago at a time that I was an active trustee at Duke, and I was going to another city to ask a person for what I thought was an astronomical amount of money.
And there was the father of one of my son's friends, and I introduced myself, and my son had been to his house. So I knew there was one friendly face in the crowd.
So there was a man who I'd never met before. This is another person. And I had to ask him for money. And he was a very secure head of a company and so on.
And we gave our pitch, and we were going in to ask for $5,000 in funding.
And I think I was feeling nervous because the amount seemed so large that I was not sure I could get it out without a throat that would be so dry that it would destroy the pitch.
And so I said to him, you know, I'd like to talk to you about the museum,